What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today I will be giving my top 10 Pixar movies. Now this is my personal choice, so if you have a different list of what you think are the top 10 Pixar movies, then comment down below and I'll have a look at them. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I was born on the 3rd of August 2000, so for the majority of my childhood I grew up with Pixar films. Now, as I grew up with Pixar films, that does mean that I hold the earlier ones more to my heart than ones that were released, for instance, last year or the year before that, because I grew up with them. So my top 10 list is not going to contain many modern Pixar movies. It is going to contain some of the older ones. However, I personally think that the older ones are the best anyway. So I'm going to give you my list right now. So at number 10 I have A Bug's Life. Now, A Bug's Life is one of the stranger Pixar films because it was the second movie released and it didn't make as much money or as much critical success as Toy Story did. However, I think that A Bug's Life is extremely underrated. Yes, the animation is not the best if you consider some of the later Pixar films. However, as a second movie released from Pixar, I really enjoyed it. It's got a good storyline, it's got great morals. I like the idea of, I know it's like a liar revealed storyline, however, I do like the idea that you should be able to stand up against bullies. I felt that was very, that really did appeal to me when I was that age, because I was bullied myself. So I really enjoyed A Bug's Life and it deserves a spot on this list. And at number 9, I have Up. Now, Up is one of the most emotional Pixar films and probably one of the most relatable because it shows an elderly man who has lost his wife due to old age and he's really struggling to cope without her. He feels very lonely and all that he wants to do is fulfill her dream and travel to Paradise Falls, which is this place in South America which hardly anyone has ever gone to. And I really enjoy this film. As I said, it's one of the more emotional Pixar films, and that doesn't mean that it's a depressing film. It's got a lot of comedy in it. I like the relationship between Carl and Russell. I think that's a really good relationship. I also like Doug, the talking dog who's in it. I find him very funny, especially the squirrel gags, so I really enjoy it. So it's one of the more emotional Pixar films, and the emotion Pixar handles really well, so Up deserves a position on this list. Now I'm going to just say that the ones from 8 to 3 were really hard to rank. I know what my 2 favourite movies are and I know what my least 2 favourite movies are. And I love all of these movies, don't get me wrong. However, numbers 3 to 8 were really hard to choose. So for number 8, I have placed Ratatouille. Now, I'm fat and I love food. So this movie honestly appeals to me. And it's not just that. I like Ratatouille as a film. I think it has a very good message. It has a message that it doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter who you are. If you are good at something, then you need to follow your dreams no matter what. And that really appeals to me. I also love this movie for the food. It makes you love food. I don't know what it is about it, but it really does make you want to become a chef. When I first saw this movie in cinemas, I wanted to become a chef. I mean, it didn't last long. However, it inspired me to become a chef. I really like the characters in this movie. I like the villain in this movie as well. And I like the movie's message. So Ratatouille deserves the number 8 spot on this list. At number 7, I have placed Toy Story 3. Don't kill me. I know some people think Toy Story 3 is the best Pixar movie, and it was released in 2010 where I was 9 years old, so I was perfect age for this movie. However, I love Toy Story 3, don't get me wrong. It has a brilliant storyline. The characters once again are great, and it has a very emotional ending which is bittersweet because you see Andy giving the toys to Bonnie and kind of that was the end of the journey. I enjoy Toy Story 3. I think it's the best, one of the best Pixar films. However, it's not the best. Maybe that's because, you know, I grew up with the older Pixar films. However, I love Toy Story 3 and it is a really, really good movie. At number 6, I have placed The Incredibles. Now, I'm a superhero fan. I like comic book films, and when Pixar did a comic book film, I really enjoy it because it's very unique. It's all original characters, and I like the idea of this movie. I like how it's like, well, you know, superheroes are bad, and it's just about superheroes kind of being exiled and having to retire from their superhero duties. I find that very interesting. I mean, seeing Mr. Incredible go from this strong, you know, principled man to a fat worker. You know, I just it's like, what? It's about a family, even though it's superheroes. It's like, well, yeah, but what if an entire family were superheroes? I like the action scenes in this. I think it's got great action scenes, a lot more than other Pixar films does. And I think it handles the superhero comic book and genre very well. So that's why Incredibles has this position on this list. So at the 5th position on my list, I have put Toy Story 2. Now, Toy Story 2 is the earliest Pixar movie I ever saw. I had it on video. I still actually, even though I've got the DVD, I still own the video cassette. I don't know why, I just it was one of the first videos I owned. And I love Toy Story 2. It's a great sequel. It really does flesh out and develop its characters really well. It has a better villain than the first one, I think, with Stinky Pig and of course the Emperor Zurg. I think it deals with the villains a lot better, and I really enjoy the storyline about this, and it plays well into Toy Story 3 because it's all about Andy's not going to be a child forever. So is there any point hanging around? Should Woody just go to this museum and be loved by generations forever, or stay loyal to Andy? And I really like that dilemma that he's got. In the end, of course, he does choose Andy, and it ends very warmly. It ends on a really good note. I enjoy Toy Story 2, I really do. It always has a special place in my heart as one of the first films I remember seeing on video, so Toy Story 2 owns this position on my list. So at the 4th position on my list, I have put Wally. Now, if ever a Pixar movie got you to think about issues, then it is Wally. I mean, I've seen a lot of, you know, environmentalist propaganda, you know, on the internet and that. However, Wally is not about that. It's just basically saying, you know, if we continue on this path with creating all this rubbish and garbage, then this is what's going to happen. Our world is going to be just a landfill site and will have to be deserted by the human race. I really, really enjoyed that premise. And of course, it's an emotional movie. I like Wally for the simple reason he doesn't really have much dialogue. And neither does Eve, the other robot. A lot of it is done through facial expressions. And the fact that they can use animation in order to convey such strong emotion better than some actors' faces can do, that is just perfection. I love Wally. It's a brilliant film. It makes you think a lot about important issues, and it has a really likeable lead in the form of the little robot Wally. At number 3, I have put Toy Story. Now, the original Pixar movie, the movie which started off Pixar's success, is amazing. I think what this movie showed is that it could be enjoyed by both children and adults, and they could both see what the movie was showing and both relate to it. Now, Tom Hanks as Woody and Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear is amazing casting. Those two really nailed the performances in this movie, and it's just a very feel-good movie. You feel very engaged with this movie. This movie I watched loads of times when I was little, and I still watch it to this day because it's so relatable. It's all about sometimes you grow out of things and replace them with other things. However, in the end, you always have that special place for something close to your heart. I really enjoy Toy Story. It shows Pixar, even though it's, the animation isn't great by a modern standpoint, I think it still holds up today, and you know what, the storyline is absolutely brilliant. At number 2, I have put Monsters Inc. Now, Monsters Inc. is a really great film. That's the thing with all of these Pixar movies I've talked about. They're just really great films. I mean, Sully and Mike are amazing, and this movie has a great villain in Randall and Mr. Watermoose. Really like them two as villains. I think they're very complex, especially with Mr. Watermoose, in the fact that, he's not really a villain. He is just trying to help the city get through this energy crisis. And yes, he does lose the plot a bit, and he goes a bit, into corruption by kidnapping a kid in order to sustain the energy supplies. However, you can tell that he's trying to do it in order to not only save his business, however, save the city from this energy crisis. And of course, this movie has such an emotional ending when Sully has to say goodbye to Boo. That's a really emotional ending, and it still pulls at the heartstrings even when I watch it now. So for just having such an emotional ending, as well as being a very energetic movie and a very different movie, it's very unique. And I like how, there's different sized doors for different monsters. Everything looks a bit monstery, like the car or the buildings. Everything just has that monster element to it. So I really love Monsters Inc. And at my number 1 Pixar movie, there was no contest, and that is Finding Nemo. Funnily enough, the first movie I ever saw in cinemas. I love this movie. It opens very emotional with the death of Nemo's father and Marlin's wife. That's ballsy, Most kids' films don't start off with murder. However, this one did. And it works. You can really understand that Marlin just wants to protect Nemo. And yes, he becomes a bit too protective. And that's why I like the idea that there's kind of 2 different storylines going on. You've got Marlin and Dory going through all these adventures in the ocean, trying to get to Nemo. And then you've got Nemo in the fish tank having to overcome his own fears and prove that he can handle himself and he doesn't have to rely on his dad all the time. I really enjoyed the storyline of this movie, as well as how it shows the ocean, because there's so many different creatures in the ocean, and it really does display that very well. It shows the depth. The ocean is a big place, and Finding Nemo kind of shows that. It doesn't just go on one tiny little reef. It's the whole ocean, and it shows that the ocean is a massive and scary place. So I love Finding Nemo. It always has a spot close to my heart because it is the first film I saw in a cinema, and it's just an amazing movie. So that's why it is number 1 on my list. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed my top 10 Pixar movies review. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. And I can just say that it was really, really hard ranking these films. I love all of these Pixar films. Some of the modern ones, not so much. However, I do love these 10 Pixar films, and it was really, really hard to rank them. This is probably the hardest ranking video I have ever done to date, and I think it's going to be the hardest that I'm ever going to do. So I will see you in another one. See ya!